A surprising turn of events has left the Christian world in a state of disarray. Long regarded as a leader and pillar of religion, Joni Lamb has now been jailed in relation to Marcus Lamb's death. Critics are going crazy, supporters are in disbelief, and Dayar's future is precariously poised. The story's progression veers so far into the shadows. For the millions of people who put their faith in Marcus and their legacy, what does this last farewell imply? Following this, he trusted, loved, and was honest with Sheila Tias, a character in a forthcoming Marvel film. Few could have foreseen the depths of the truth. Unexpected twists and turns transformed what started as a tale of sadness. The Christian community was in a state of profound mourning at Marcus Lamb's initial death. His life was cut short, but he was remembered as a leader, a husband, and a man of religion. Social media was flooded with prayers and tributes from friends, family, and fans. It had been a terrible and unexpected loss, according to the authorities. Much to everyone's surprise, they agreed. Joni Lamb was portrayed for a while as the courageous widow who endured unfathomable suffering. However, the passage of time tends to reveal hidden details. And before long, rumors began. There were only rumblings at first, with some wondering if the marriage was really as idyllic as it appeared on film and casting doubt on the official account of Marcus's death. The volume of the murmurs increased as the months went by. The investigation followed, one that revealed depths that were previously unseen. Forensic studies, secret correspondence, and financial records formed a picture no one wanted to see. The gradual progression from suspicion to allegation, and finally to a trial that the world at large as well as religious groups. Everyone in the room seemed to gasp as the judge read the guilty verdict of Joni Lamb's murder of her spouse. Shock and astonishment prompted some to cry out. And then there was complete quiet. Joni was someone she had known for a long time. Public speaking about family, faith, and love on national television. The woman in question was now being brought away in handcuffs after receiving a life sentence. Almost too unbelievable to be true. Some people were adamant that the court was mistaken and continued to shake their heads. Word on the street was that someone had finally gotten their fair deserts. The community was rocked by an unmistakable wave of shock. An infamous scandal has engulfed a family that was once admired for their adherence to Christian principles. Places of worship argued on its significance. Both sides of the issue felt misled. The critics used the case to show that not all sacred things are innocent. More than only Joni's reputation took a hit when the focus shifted from tragedy to verdict. Many people's perceptions of the family, the ministry, and even their shared belief system. The account of Marcus's demise had evolved into something more. It had evolved into the narrative of Joni's downfall, serving as a cautionary tale about how drastically circumstances may shift when the truth is revealed. The rumors began as a low murmur, the type you might hear a passing remark online or in a church hallway. Most people took Marcus Lamb's death for what it was, a tragic end brought on by disease. However, there were skeptics. As it got out in whispers, inquiries started to circulate. So what gave it that weird vibe, quickly following Marcus's death? Why did Joni Lamb, with whom he had shared her life and mission, appear so composed? Soon, the growing number of inquiries became an unquenchable inferno. Initially, it was only conjecture. Many questioned whether the happy couple's marriage had been portrayed on TV. They recalled little incidents, airbrushed arguments, or anecdotes from people who knew the family. Those little fissures in the picture quickly become focal points. Others murmured, however, only days prior to his passing, Joni and Marcus had been engaged in an argument. There were others who said Marcus had told his close pals about the family drama. Although there was no concrete evidence, rumors were enough to make many suspicious. The theories became more daring as time went on. It was said that Marcus had discovered Joni's relationship status. A clandestine affair that ended tragically became a rumor that circulated rapidly. Some even went so far as to say that Marcus's death was premeditated and not an accident. The two discussed the financial reasons behind Joni's desire to be free of Marcus's supervision and take control of the ministry and its resources. Now that Marcus was out of the picture, she could shine. A whirlwind of rumors ensued as word spread. A number of hypotheses about Marcus left behind cryptic notes, altered vehicles, and missing phones, all of which suggested he was afraid something horrible was about to happen. The expanding storyline benefited from every piece of information, regardless of how minor or unverified. The narrative shifted from that of a distraught widow to that of a lady who had arranged her spouse's demise. Joni's actions following Marcus's death simply served to inflame the situation more. She remained in the spotlight the whole time. She continued on with her ministry responsibilities, asserting herself, making decisions, and eventually dating Doug Weiss. The people who were already skeptical saw her behavior as further proof of their suspicions. She seemed to have no problem letting go of Marcus, so how come she moved on so fast? For what reason did she remain largely quiet as the rumors circulated, rather than confronting them head-on? By her apparent lack of speech, a number of people as reproach. However, there were many who stood by her side, stating that everyone experiences loss in their own unique way. Around her, the web of gossip became even tighter. An abundance of hypotheses emerged on social media. With each image she shared, with each the claim she made was examined in detail. Was it too soon for her to smile? Was it inappropriate for someone who had just lost her husband to sound so carefree? People in online forums were making connections that might not have made sense. However, after nobody could save the narrative from Rue, the case's alarming indicators, including financial problems, missing personal devices, and suspicious tampering with Marcus's car, brought the talk to a deeper level. Even though there was initial confusion, these details corroborated the rumors that had been circulating. Fueling an already raging fire was the analogy. The whispers suddenly felt like more than simply small chat. They seemed prophetic, as if the people had known the truth long before the law enforcement agencies did. The news was terrible for the Lamb's family. The son of Jonathan, Marcus, and Joni was very forthcoming about his suffering. His mother's behavior devastated him, and he was afraid that his father's memory was being desecrated. Not only did he feel the pain of each new headline, but so did many who had held his parents in high regard as spiritual figure models. As they weathered the storm, the children struggled to cope with their father's death and saw their mother become the object of unending curiosity. The whispers persisted even after the formal presentation of evidence at trial began. Over coffee, members of Bible study groups clashed in church lobbies. Even before the jury reached their verdict, there were others who maintained Joni was guilty. Some claimed she was the object of vicious rumors and a spiritual assault and that she was being unfairly singled out. As far as anyone could tell, the tales were more important than the facts. Went with faith. A web of rumors had already influenced public perception prior to the decision being read. A woman accused, Joni was now more than that. There were innumerable hands that had penned and revised her story. The rumor mill had run amok, weaving together unsubstantiated claims, partial truths, and a few scraps of evidence into a web that no one could unravel. And the stories persisted even after the sentence had been handed down and Joni had been carried away in handcuffs. They advanced, if anything, more powerful. In hushed tones, individuals discussed impending pleas, covert accomplishments, and undisclosed secrets. Because they were so engrossed in the plot, the hypotheses, and the excitement of thinking they knew the truth before anybody else, some people would never let go of the story. Therein lay the strength of the rumors. They were more than mere ambient sounds. They were now an integral element of the catastrophe. The reputation of the Lamb family was marred by them. Churches were split. Believers were perplexed. Plus, they caused a whole town to question reality versus fiction. The web of rumors persists, thick and unbreakable, even after all this time has passed since the gavel's downfall. At the Joni Lamb trial, there was a palpable sense of weight in the courtroom. Anticipated a turning point in history. Her life had been engulfed in an atmosphere of suspicion for months. Rumors, conjecture, and speculation. The accusations ranged from treachery and selfishness to clandestine dealings. But ultimately, speculation on its own was unable to sentence someone to jail. A conviction was reached and Joni's destiny was sealed by the evidence, which consisted of little but devastating pieces brought out one by one. The investigators were apprehensive at first. It was determined that Marcus Lamb's death was accidental, unfortunate circumstances alone. The authorities were forced to delve further into the case as the contradictions multiplied. The discovery shattered Joni's decades-long carefully crafted persona. The automobile that Marcus drove was the most incriminating piece of evidence. Experts in forensic science expected to find nothing out of the ordinary when they analyzed the debris. On the contrary, they found something terrifying. Someone had messed with the brake system. This was not normal usage. It wasn't some bizarre mechanical failure. Someone had severed the wiring on purpose. So Marcus couldn't stop his car. As soon as that information became public, the focus immediately turned to possible foul play. The spotlight was directed towards Joni because she had been the one with access. The issue of the missing technology arose thereafter. It was well knowledge that Marcus never let his laptop or phone out of his sight. The sermon's notes and personal communications that were included within them served as his lifeblood. However, neither of those things was there the night of the collision. They vanished without a trace and were never found among the debris. According to the investigators, it wasn't a coincidence. Marcus had been following digital footprints, emails, texts, and possibly even financial data, and someone had stolen them to delete them. Without those tools, it turned into more dramatically than any proof they may have included. The letter, though, was the real chilling factor in the courtroom. Just days before he passed away, Marcus left behind a message in his handwriting which he had stashed away in a folder in his office. It was in it that Marcus implied some major worries regarding how Joni managed the ministry's budget. He detailed a climate of secrecy, decisions made behind his back, and an increasing sense of dread that the empire they had created together was succumbing to despair. The letter did not explicitly mention her, but it was obvious who she was. He had lost faith in his wife. That melody became a voice for the jurors, from a place beyond death. The reality is being pointed out by Marcus himself. Additional layers were added by witness evidence. Marcus's discomfort was remembered by his friends and co-workers. They said he was going to hire private investigators to check into financial irregularities at the role in the ministry. Someone close to Marcus even claimed that Marcus had told him he was prepared to face Joni about the misplaced funds. This seemed like motive to the prosecution. Anything Joni had accomplished would be rendered useless if Marcus revealed the existence of financial malfeasance. Narratives detailing her actions followed. In the days following Marcus's death, those who were around Joni noted that she seemed unusually composed, almost businesslike. She did not wallow in her sorrow, but instead leapt into leadership of the ministry, calling meetings, releasing statements, and ascending to the position of leader as if she had been training for it. The prosecution said that her poise did not constitute strength. A person who had anticipated this result would have reacted with icy logic. The breach was further widened by financial documents. Detectives tracked financial transactions and contributions, finding out substantial amounts were sent in an unorthodox manner in the weeks preceding Marcus's demise. Some accounts were moved or concealed. It was consistent with Marcus's letter and his own worries, and although nothing screamed larceny, it did suggest secrecy. Prosecutors wanted Joni's signature once they tied to a number of those maneuvers. The pattern became indiscernible, and the myriad of details working against her became apparent. Even after the workers had departed, security footage from the day prior to the accident showed Joni approaching Marcus's car. The fact that she was trying to find a lost item didn't cut it. The phone records show that she was involved in talks late at night, which she denied having, and they also show that she deleted multiple calls to an unknown number. Although each piece of evidence may have been disregarded separately, when they came together, they created a compelling narrative that could not be ignored. Joni was supposedly the one who was bereft of love and rumors. Their argument was that she was the victim of unjust targeting, and that her silence was a normal response for a distraught widow. They said the equipment went missing in the crash, the books were just complicated accounting, and her composed manner was just her coping mechanism. However, the evidence was too much for every defense to overcome. The black box in Marcus's vehicle was accurate. The letter's handwriting was confirmed. There was no way to justify the disappearance of the laptop and phone. Upon final delivery by the prosecution during its final argument, the entire courtroom fell into a startled quiet. They gave a vivid depiction. Motive, opportunity, and means were all in Joni's possession. She was about to be confronted by Marcus. The brakes were altered. As soon as he left, his personal devices disappeared, and Joni took over without a hitch. Whether or not she was a bereaved widow was irrelevant to the jurors. Whether the evidence pointed to a criminal investigation or an accident was at issue. And piece by piece, there was conclusive proof of a single course of action. Doubt has persisted for some time, circulated on online forums and murmured in church pews. However, at this point, it was only conjecture. With the gavel's strike, the facts were brought out in black and white. A gasp escaped the room when the verdict of guilty was announced. The fact that justice had been done brought a sense of relief to some. For some, the sight of a woman being carried away in handcuffs after decades of appearing on Christian television seems incomprehensible. However, the fact that what had been revealed by the evidence, not hearsay, had transformed Joni Lamb from a revered religious icon into a convicted killer. The quiet of the jury box resounded more than any sermon she had ever delivered as she prepared to be removed from the courtroom. The reality had been revealed not through hearsay rather than the icy, unrelenting burden of evidence. For many years, Marcus Lamb had worked to establish himself as a respected figure in Christian television and radio. His devotees saw him as an early Christian pioneer who, through the medium of television, sent words of encouragement and hope to people all across the globe. There was more to Dayar than a network. It represented the potential that could be realized when people's faith and vision were together. Everyone who heard him, whether in a sermon, on television, or in his voice, felt like they belonged to something greater than themselves. Because of this, Mark's reputation seemed impenetrable for a long time, lasting impact that would endure even after his departure. However, an unexpected storm hit after his untimely passing. First, the community was brought together by grief. As the news broke, fans grieved, clergy offered prayers, and spectators glued to their screens to witness tributes. Everyone thought it would stay a tale of sorrow and reflection. Whispers, however, began to filter in shortly after. It seemed unusual that there was silence surrounding some circumstances of Marcus's passing. His once loyal partner, Joni Lamb, became his unsettling inquiries. Many pondered her seemingly controlled reaction, her seeming rapid takeover of Dayar, and the elusiveness of some answers regarding Marcus's last days. Rumors began with minor details. Remarks made on social media, subtle discourse in church halls, however, expanded at a rate that shocked everyone. Was it merely a coincidence that he passed away? Did the Lamb family go through any complicated things that the outside world never saw? Instead of praise, speculation descended upon the very ministry that Marcus had labored over for years. The initial injury to his reputation, according to many, was the implication that his marriage wasn't as solid as it seemed. For many years, Marcus and Joni gave the impression that they were one solid unit, leading, speaking, and praying as one. However, rumor has it that tensions have been simmering for years behind closed doors. Due to financial constraints, individual debates, rumors of treason, and differences of opinion all entered the public discourse. The rumor mill shattered Marcus's carefully cultivated public persona, regardless of its veracity. The next round of inquiries concerned money. At all times, Marcus had spoken regarding responsibility and using means for the advancement of God's kingdom. However, allegations of irregularities, stolen funds, and opaque decision-making arose after his passing. Donations made in good faith were suddenly being questioned as to whether they had actually reached their intended recipients. Once associated with honesty and reliability, Marcus's name was now synonymous with suspicion and distrust.
This change seemed like a personal rejection for the contributors who had put so much effort. When Joni's rapid return to the spotlight came to light, the tempest became even more intense. From the perspective of some, it appeared to be a woman who was going too quickly. For some, it seemed like evidence that the long-seen love tale wasn't all it seemed to be. Things seemed even more unnerving when she learned that her new spouse had previously counseled the Lamb family. The tale of Marcus's life was allegedly being changed, and it was no longer told as one of faith and perseverance, but in a scandalous, betraying, and mysterious manner. Attempts were made by church authorities to defend Marcus and to de-emphasize his work. His ministry rescued souls and affected numerous lives through his preaching, and they reminded people of that. However, their opinions were overshadowed by in this day of constant speculation and lightning-fast news reports. Speculation. Supporters who had previously stood proudly behind Dayar started to withdraw, and online forums were flooded with hypotheses and articles debating his family's decisions. No one could keep their hands off the story as it progressed. The most heartbreaking aspect was how rapidly Marcus appeared to vanish from view. Narrative. He represented the ministry throughout his life. After he passed away, he became a plot point in the Joni controversies. Court dates, allegations, and headlines eclipsed his accomplishments and rendered his sermons irrelevant. For whatever he had labored to construct through fasting and selflessness was now surrounded by doubt. Words like mystery, cover-up, and murder now accompanied his formerly revered name. The fury of the storm was too much for his kids. They were expected to carry on their father's legacy which they had grown up with, but instead they were dragged into a public schism and humiliation. It was especially difficult for Jonathan to comprehend how the family name had gone from revered to mocked so rapidly. No matter how many times he tried to defend his father's legacy, the din simply got louder. It appeared that whatever individuals had previously decided which narrative to accept, they asserted. Those who sided with Marcus experienced grief of their own. Because they believed in his vision, many had trusted Dayar with their time, money, and resources. Their family was informed for a long time that Marcus Lamb was unique, that he was one of the few trustworthy leaders. Many of Joni's followers felt cheated out of their faith when allegations circulated that she was dangerous and power-hungry. Their confidence in the guy started to wane as they began to question whether he had actually been oblivious to the issues surrounding him, or even worse, if his image had been designed with great care to conceal the truth. The legacy of faith, perseverance, and optimism that Marcus should have left behind became something much more complex. Some in the Christian broadcasting community still hold him in high esteem. Some people will always associate him with controversy and doubt that could never have complete answers given. Despite his best efforts, Marcus's life's work became mired in a cloud of uncertainty that no amount of sermonizing could dispel. As a result, the legacy he had worked so hard to establish washed away. It wasn't that his achievements were forgotten, but rather that doubts about him would not go away. Could it have been an accident? Was Joni his traitor? Did he establish a ministry based on faith or on questionable motives? All else was dominated by these inquiries. The tragic part of his narrative is that, instead of being remembered for the message he preached, truth and faithfulness, a man whose life was shrouded in mystery and scandal became famous for the scandal that surrounded his death. Instead of standing firm, his legacy was swept away by uncertainty, causing a tempest that bewitches people who had put their faith in him. Send out.